What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoFi, I want to go over some expectations for this upcoming week, what might cause some volatility in the stock price, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So going into this upcoming week, we are under the fear category. So this is a fear and greed index. So in theory, people's appetite for risk isn't necessarily going to be on the table, but there's a lot of good opportunity for this week for us to move from the fear back to the neutral. And so one thing that's been largely plaguing the market is China, but it looks like there was a very productive conversation between Besant and the vice premier of China on the 18th. So the market might take this as a win, a small win, but at least a move in the right direction. Of course, Trump and China aren't really meeting up until I think it's the last week of October, but nonetheless, the market might take this as a good positive. One thing that has also been really plaguing the broader market, kind of as of Thursday, was regional banks. So regional banks kind of showing some signs of cracking, throwing it back to 2023. I think in previous videos, I accidentally said 2024, but March 2023, that's when Silicon Valley Bank kind of went, had their issue, went belly up or whatever else. And one thing that got us out of that difficult time was companies unveiling their earnings. They kicked ass. And so I think actually it was conveniently back then Netflix. So very interesting timing because we do have Netflix having putting out their earnings this time around. So when it comes to a lot of these big companies such as Netflix, Tesla, IBM, Intel, and so forth, if they hit on a lot of their key metrics as well as give good future guidance, market might see this as a very good positive and forget all about the regional banks from last week. So putting us back into maybe the neutral category and kind of raising people's appetite for risk. So again, earnings is going to be a big one for this upcoming week, as well as data points. So the beginning part, we don't really have too much. We have a couple of Fed speakers throughout the week, so that could cause some volatility, but big one is going to be right here. So on Friday, we have CPI as well as Michigan consumer sentiment. So big inflationary data points. And then S&P is going to be putting out composite manufacturing and services. So that's going to be quite the hot morning. And so S&P, a lot of these data points right here, 50 is a key pivot. So anything above 50 shows more of an expansion. Anything below 50 shows more of a kind of a contraction. So we have big data coming out as well as big companies unveiling the earnings. So that should be a fairly fun time. And we're almost about 1 week away from SoFi's upcoming earnings. And so historically, that does cause a little bit of FOMO. So going into this upcoming week, you might have some institutions buying into SoFi. Interestingly enough, you did see 𝗪𝗧𝗛𝗧 post this. So good old Cathie Wood did sell not a significant amount, but 25,000 shares of SoFi. So that might just be rebalancing, but very interesting timing going into SoFi's earnings. I think as far as her, when it comes down to rebalancing, there's no rhyme or reason. And sometimes I actually find her kind of interesting because how can someone say, for instance, Tesla going to go to like 4,000 or 5,000, whatever crazy price target she has on it, and she sells it pretty much a day after she says it's going like 4,000. Is like, what are you thinking? So I think in general, this was just minor rebalancing, nothing kind of crazy or any significance from that. SoFi did post this on a side note. So this is kind of throwing it back to when they did announce that they're going to be able to send money through the blockchain to Mexico for pretty much pennies on the dollar. And this individual pretty much confirmed that. So he did say that he sent $50 to his cousin in Mexico and it cost 25 cents. So SoFi is moving in the right direction. And once they do broaden this, because I think Mexico is the only one right now, only country that you can actually send to. Once they do open it up, then that's going to be a lot more new members, new opportunities for SoFi. So I think this is a pretty good thing, but still it's not really new information for this upcoming week. It's just more of a fun FYI. Aside from that, looking at the shorts going into this upcoming week, 9.47% of the free float is being shorted. Shorts have actually increased for the last 4 consecutive days. Why? I assume it's just to kind of slow the progress of SoFi down, or maybe just piggyback off the like macro fear possibly, but anticipate them to be fairly active. Even on Friday, they did increase 149,000 shares. When it comes down to also what to expect this upcoming week, analyst ratings. always get ratings leading into SoFi's earnings. It just does not make sense. Even the last two that did come out last week, so you had a $18 sell KBW, Tim, who has a 70% success rating, and then a $24 hold Goldman Sachs, Will, who has a 45% success rating. Why did they give ratings last week? I have no idea. It doesn't logically make sense to give any ratings before a company puts out their earnings, but that's always been a very common scenario with SoFi. But at the same time, it's also very common for bears to pop up. So don't be surprised if you have some new ratings coming out, some bearish ones, such as Bank of America or maybe even Compass Point and Morgan Stanley reiterate their rating. So again, something to keep in mind. As far as from a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be kind of between that $28 and $30 range. So clearly FOMO is anticipated. Bears are anticipating for it to be kind of sub 25. So maybe more fear, misses on earnings, possibly. The current implied move based on the options for SoFi's upcoming earnings is 13.1%. So roughly almost like a $3.50 move in either direction is anticipated. So for those of you that like to do options, I think this is the week to do it for option strategies for earnings. So for those of you that are dabbling with options, let me know your kind of what you're planning with that. Are you doing, like, for instance, a iron condor or possibly a short strangle? Like, what are you kind of doing when it comes down to that? Or are you just going straight long call? Are you very, very optimistic? So let me know what you're kind of doing with that. When it comes to this with a 26.54 trading right below this pivot point, so 26.81 will be that key point to really get over. And this is the one-day chart, so very strong support and resistance points. 24.29 is going to be the following support, 22.73, and then 29.33 is going to be the next strong target slash resistance. Monday is going to be a pretty big day for SoFi from the technicals. So this is now the third consecutive time it did bounce off of that 50-day moving average. So typically what does happen is the W does form out. And so you have right here playing out. So in theory, this is where you could see some pretty good momentum as it bounces off of that 50 from Friday, really pushing it to that $29 range, which kind of matches with the bullish options out there. So I think going into this upcoming week, you do have a fair amount of optimism from multiple different angles, as I mentioned. But looking at the market position, you see a little bit more willing buyers. Still, though, there is a lot around that 28, so a lot of walls around that $28 range. So just anticipate a lot of kind of resistance at that stage. But nonetheless, I do feel like there will be a certain level of FOMO really kicking in. And even just based alone from the China update, I think that could be enough to really push the market a good 0.5%. And then dependent on how companies put out their earnings and so forth, that could be that nice catalyst to really finish off the broader market and just like move it on higher. So let me know your thoughts on SoFi. Where do you see things going for this upcoming week? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? What's your kind of general thoughts? And I feel like right now it's a very interesting time in the market because arguments could be made either direction, being bullish or bearish. So it depends on kind of your sentiment, right? And how overly committed you are in a certain stock. Like if you have everything in SoFi, then of course you want it to go higher. But like I said, there's bullish and bearish kind of points. So in my opinion, I do feel that at one time throughout the week, you will see this 24.29 being hit. But at the same time, I do feel that there's going to be a certain level of FOMO. So I do feel realistically by the end of the week, we should be between this R2 and this R1. So between that 29.33 and 30.89. So let me know your viewpoint on that. So again, that would really mean a new 52-week potentially high going into this upcoming week. So let me know your thoughts. Hopefully everyone's having an amazing weekend thus far. But one final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, put out daily day trades, numerous swing trades. Worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.